My name is Charles, Charles, E is my middle initial, Gebhardt, Gebhardt.
Is that German?
That's German.
So you're
I'm
ascendants.
100% both sides.
Oh, you're 100% pure German. Okay. What is your birthday?
October 11th, 1931.
I'm sorry?
October 11th, 1931.
31. So you born 2 years after the Great Depression.
After the stock market crash, yes.
Yeah. You didn't feel it because you were too young, right?
Too young,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago.
Chicago. And tell me about your family when you were growing up, your parents and your siblings.
My father, Charles Robert Gebhardt, and my mother, Rose Caroline, maiden name Norton Gebhardt. And my sister, who was 6.5 years old, is 6.5 years older than me, Marie Dolores Gebhardt. And we, after I was born, we lived in River Grove, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. And that was during the Depression. My dad was he had an automobile business in Chicago, but lost that because of the Depression, and went to work as a car mechanic for some people that he knew, and did that until 1936, when he went to work on the railroad, for the Milwaukee Railroad, as a sleeping and parlor car conductor. And then my mother was a housewife mother, and my sister, who was, I said, older than me, we went to a school, and in the suburbs, River Grove, Elmwood Park, Franklin Park area.
When did you graduate high school? And what school?
I graduated from Leiden Community High School in Franklin Park, Illinois.
Franklin Park?
Franklin Park, Franklin.
What? Could you repeat your name of the high school?
Leiden, Leyden.
Leiden. Leiden Community.
Yeah.
When?
1949.
Did you learn anything about Korea from the school?
No.
They didn't teach you about my nation?
Nothing, nothing about Korea specifically, other than news pickups we had of. I was always interested in of course, World War II was going on before I started high school, and I was always interested in geography and history. I had to know where things were going on, and yes, Korea did come to me, so I was more familiar with Korea than I would say 95% of people my age.
Mm-hmm. Of your age, because you fought there, right?
No, because I was interested in where things were happening, like in World War II. If they mentioned something about that, some of our prisoners had been brought to Korea, I wanted to know, well, where is Korea? What part of Korea were they brought to? If that came out in the news.
But that was after you served in Korea.
No, that was before. That was
Before
I even went to high school.
Really?
Yeah.
But before you went to high school, there was nothing news about Korea.
World War II.
World War II.
World War II.
And that covered Korea too?
Yes, because the Japanese had occupied Korea for so long, and they did bring many of our prisoners, soldiers that were prisoners, to the area of Korea.
So you actually knew about Korea.
I knew a little bit about it. I knew where it was. I knew the names of. Well, I knew Seoul, things like that.
Huh. You are the only exception here that knew anything about Korea before you went to Korea.
Yeah.
Because in the school they didn't teach anything about Korea.
No.
But so now, had you imagined that you could be in Korea at the time?
No, I couldn't imagine at that time. I could not. No.
You could now, right?
No.
So how do you link the dot here? I mean, you didn't know much about it, but you are the only exception, knew about geography and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But you went there, you fought for this nation. Now the Korea is like
Big.
So what do you think about this whole thing?
What do I think about this whole thing?
Yeah.
I wasn't too happy to go anywhere. I mean, it could have been Germany. It could have been. When I was in the service, it could have been anywhere in the world where they would have sent me.
And you didn't want to go to Korea, to be honest, right?
Korea was at that time the shooting war that was going on, and so it was fearful. But I thought that I had. I was in a category that would probably not be in direct combat. Let me put it that way. I assured
who wants to be killed?
I tried to assure my parents when I had orders to go to the Far East that I would be in headquarters somewhere or something.
You lied to them.
Well, I didn't lie. I think I even believed my story.
You believed your story. That's good. So, tell me about it. When did you learn about the breakout of the Korean War, and how did you know about it?
I was in officers candidate school in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Why did you join the military?
I joined because I knew I would be drafted shortly.
So when did you join it?
I first sought out the recruiter in November of 1949.
Mm-hmm.
And
Army?
The Army, and I entered in January 4th of 1950.
For, you mean the basic training, or
To start my Army training, formal training.
where?
And that was at Camp Gordon, Gordon,
Mm-hmm.
Georgia.
So January 4th, you joined military and started your basic military training
Yes.
in Camp Gordon.
Yes.
So how was it, the basic training?
Was different than what maybe I had expected, but was something that I had grown up with because the recent thing of World War II. We saw news flashes of it. My brother-in-law had been in Germany in World War II, and so it was not really new to me. It was more or less what I had come to expect.
So wasn't that hard?
No.
No. What was your MOS at the basic training camp?
I had been trained as a cryptographer, and which deals with ciphers and top secret work, and I was trained as a cryptographer.
Tell me about it. What kind of education did you get to be a cryptography?
I don't know, just that I qualified. When they interviewed me, I qualified.
I mean, what did you learn? What do they teach actually about the cryptography?
Well, how to, well, one, how to use the various machines that convert text into ciphers and back again.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I couldn't even say, at that time I was restricted from even saying that about it.
Right.
We couldn't even, we were told not even to use the word cryptography. It was so top secret. But since then, modern innovation of things, had relaxed that, I understand. So now I can even say the word.
So they teach you about the code book, right? And how to declassify that, decrypt it, and then put it into
yes.
text, right?
Yes,
How did you like it? Did you like it?
I liked it.
Hmm.
I liked it. It was very interesting. And of course, they teach you things. I learned how to run a teletype machine, 104 words a minute.
104 words a minute,
104 words a minute. I was lucky to get out of high school able to type 35 words a minute.
yeah. So how tough was that?
It wasn't. It wasn't that tough because you're doing that all day. You know, you're doing that, and that's all there is. It's concentrate. You have to concentrate on. And besides that, I had learned a lot. I had worked on the railroad, and I learned a lot about
Signaling, right?
well, it was the in the
Telegram?
agent's office where we dealt with different facets of where cars are coming from, where they're going to,
Yeah.
and things like that. And we had to type out reports and things like that with the old Royal Underwood typewriters, and you had to learn to move the work along and correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it. You learn to do things correct the first time.
Got it. So when did you leave for Korea? What was your unit?
Well, I was at Fort Benning when the Korean War broke out, and like I said, I was in an officer's candidate class.
Ah,
And the two of us, out of a class of 21, two of us were called in to the commanding officer of our group, and he told us that we were going to be taken out of the class, and we were given orders to go to the Far East because they needed critical MOS, as they call it, military occupational specialty, MOS, and over there. And later on I found out that the reason why they picked two of us, and as a side point, two of us with the most German names of the 21, to go, because we were too young to become officers.
huh.
You had to be in your 21st year to become an officer. And here we were in our, 19th year?
Yeah.
And so then we got time off to go home and get out to Camp Stoneman, California.
So you couldn't finish this officer's course?
No,
No, okay. That's too bad.
worked out.
Okay. When did you leave for Korea? From where?
Left from San Francisco
Mm.
on trying to think of the date. July 5th?
Mm.
July 5th, I believe it was,
1950?
1950.
Wow.
July 5th. The war was only how many days old then?
Yeah. Just 2 weeks, maybe.
5th I'm trying to think, it was in the middle of the week, I think, and it was the 5th or the 8th. I think it was the 5th.
And you went to Japan?
Then we went to Yokohama.
Mm. Then from there, where did you go?
We took the train around past Hiroshima. In fact, I got off the train at Hiroshima and could see the city was all built brand new.
Uh-huh.
It was something. Very, very industrious people to have done that in such a short time. But then the train continued on around the bay there, I'd say 15, 20 miles to a point called Iwakuni, Iwakuni.
Yeah.
And
And that's where that cryptography people gathered working there, right?
Oh, I was at what it was called pipeline. We were just, I was a corporal at the time, but and I was a replacement. And as far as I knew, it's my orders read, and it didn't say nothing about cryptographic or anything on there. At least that's what my orders said. And after a short stay there, on the 28th of July, I and a few others were flown in a C-46
Mm-hmm.
to Busan.
Mm.
At that time, they spelled it with a P.
Yeah.
And at an airfield called K1.
Mm-hmm.
And K1 was the runway was pierced steel planking runway,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at the end of the we were actually the first plane to fly in there from Iwakuni because of the monsoon.
Mm-hmm.
It was right at the end of the monsoon season. You're familiar with how the season runs?
Yep.
It was July the 28th.
Yep.
And
That's a rainy season.
yeah, we oh, yes, and the plane came in and it had sort of wide wings, and as it came down to the runway, it went straight up just like a helicopter would, back up in the air again,
Wow.
and then right back down. There was
Wow.
no free roll.
That's how strong the wind was.
How I got out of the plane and the water was over my combat boots.
Wow. What a nice surprise, right?
Yeah.
How was Busan that you saw? Describe it, because
I was at an airfield, and I really didn't get to see anything too much. It was very cloudy yet and everything, and so they ushered us into a operation shack, they called it. Well, I don't know. It was some kind of a metal building, and Butler building, I guess they called it. And I went in there, and I handed my orders that I was given at Iwakuni, and I hadn't really read them all the way or anything, so I don't know exactly what word for word what was on them. But and I handed it to the sergeant that was at a desk there, and he just looked at him very briefly, and he says, "There's 5 telephones hanging on the wall there." He says, "Take one," he says, and crank it 4 times, he says, "and you should have concrete red answer you."
what is that?
The unit that I was supposed to get in contact with.
Uh-huh.
and so they answered, and they said concrete red, and I told them who I was, and they said, he says, "Yeah, I got four people in a 3/4 ton. It's a little bit bigger than Jeep, and or something like that." And he says, "Coming there." He says, "They should be getting there now." Well, it was that time around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, civilian time, 4 o'clock. So after a little bit, I saw a vehicle pull up, and the guy got out and called my name, and he asked me to get in.
Where did you go?
And then I went to near Masan. You know, the thing is I had told my folks that I would be in headquarters somewhere.
And?
But these 4 guys in this vehicle were carrying what we call grease guns. You know what a grease gun?
No.
It looks like a mechanic's grease gun.
Grease gun,
It's a 45 caliber automatic weapon.
Yeah.
Not too different than a burp gun in a way. And as we rode out of Busan, I wasn't noticing too much of anything, except wondering what this I was getting into. I noticed something that looked like northern lights. You know, aurora.
Yeah, aurora.
Yeah, and it kept shimmering like. But as we went along further, it got louder and was making noise. It was artillery.
Yeah. Was in the middle of very severe battle there in Busan and Nakdong.
It was, yeah. Well, that's where I went, Masan, which is just below the Nakdong Bulge.
Right.
On the, would it be the southwestern curve of the Nakdong River.
Yes. So Masan, M-A-S-A-N, Masan.
Yeah, Masan.
Yeah. So what did you do in Masan?
Well, I went to this unit there, which ended up being the 29th Infantry Regiment,
Mm-hmm.
which had just gotten there 2 days before.
Yeah.
And they had been rushed there. They were supposed to go to Japan for further training, but they had been these fellas had been on easy duty for months and months in Guam and Okinawa, guarding the air bases. So instead of coming there with 3 battalions, they came there with only 2 battalions, no weapons, because they were supposed to get new weapons in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And they arrived there short a battalion, and also short their regimental commander. Those people were sent to Hawaii and back to the United States with VD.
Mm-hmm.
They had such easy duty there, I guess. And so they were short of everything, but they were put under the command of a I forget his name now, but of a brigadier, South Korean brigadier general. And I guess the communications gap, everything was so different for everybody. These fellows had new weapons that they hadn't even zeroed yet or anything, and he had to take them on a mission into the mountains around Masan. Maybe you're familiar with the mountains around there. I'd say they're 3,000 feet high or 3,500 feet high. But yet, and don't forget, this was still in the rainy, soggy time, and the North Koreans entrapped them, and many of the fellows from the 29th were massacred, and so they came back, and here I am.
So what did you do there? What was your mission?
Well, they placed me in what they call S2 and S3, Battalion S2, S3.
Mm-hmm.
And I did go out on patrol with them, with the unit the next day, and the officer in charge there came up to me before we went out on patrol, and he said, understand you had some OCS, I had a little bit of ROTC. He said, I'm gonna depend on you a lot, you know, and that doesn't make you feel too good. But then.
So you have done nothing about cryptography there?
No.
No.
Not there. And then after that, I was told to go up with a artillery forward observer.
Wow.
And this young man, see, I was, not 19 yet, and he was 21. He had graduated from West Point in May, and this is like
July.
August the 4th or
Yeah.
something like that. See, and
He knew nothing about it.
yeah, well, he was very well trained. This young man was excellent to get along with. We had four other enlisted men with us to handle the phone lines for us, and also protection. And so we were in these foxholes, dugouts, and on a hillside, looking over the Nocturne, and also into a wooded area where the North Koreans had their tanks and stuff there, and we were observing if they made any movements, if they made any thrust type of movement to move somewhere or something. Then we could call artillery shot. This officer would call an artillery shot on him. I would report back to my unit this activity, what it was.
But that must be very dangerous because you are so close to the North Koreans, right? Were you able to see them?
They would come. Well, yes, you could see them, and you could expect that maybe they would circle around and come in behind you or something. And that's why we had these enlisted men also with us, because they would be our guards there. But what these people mainly did is they come around at night and they would cut our telephone lines. And then we'd have to send a couple of guys back down to the artillery positions to get us new wire.
Right.
And come up. And of course, we'd always ask them, bring us some coffee.
So how dangerous was it? Did you encounter North Korean soldiers there?
Not directly. Not directly. We knew they were around, and it became something that you almost expect. But this officer that I was with, this young man I was with, whenever he would call artillery shots, he called them right on. He never asked for a practice shot. He called them right on. He was good. I understand the young man was killed in Korea later on.
Were you afraid? Were you scared at the time?
Everybody says, no, I wasn't afraid, kind of macho like. Yes, you're afraid. You're constantly afraid, but if you let that get at you too much, what good are you then?
You were not wounded there?
I was not wounded there.
You were very lucky.
I was very lucky.
How severe the battle was?
Pardon?
How many sacrifice casualties? Did you see many people being killed, right?
Not at that time.
Not at the time?
Not at that time. Later on, they busted up to 29th Regiment, and we were transferred to other units. I went to the 32nd Infantry Regiment, 1st Battalion, because they were planning the Incheon invasion at that time, and I got in on that.
So you were part of Incheon landing?
Yes.
Oh, tell me about it. When did you?
Well, I got into it because one of the things they realized then that I was a cryptographer.
So we don't have much time, so we need to really go back and forth about the answers and questions.
Yes, maybe it'd be best you ask me the question, because we got a lot to cover yet.
So what did you do for the Incheon operation? What did you do?
Well, we took a contingent of Army engineers following the Marines into Kimpo Airfield, so they could resurrect Kimpo Airfield so it could be used immediately.
Mm-hmm. But that was before Incheon landing.
That was, no,
After, right?
After.
So what about Incheon landing? Did you go to Incheon yourself?
Went into Incheon, yeah.
What did you do?
Landed there and followed the Marines over to Kimpo.
Oh, really? But you were there because of your skill on cryptography, right?
No.
No?
I wouldn't say at that time. It was my being into S2 and S3, which is S2 is intelligence, S3 is operations for an infantry unit, and I'd say more of that than the cryptography.
So you from Incheon to Seoul?
Incheon to Kimpo.
Kimpo.
Then we those of us that were taking these Army engineers to Kimpo had to filter our way through the Marine units back to Yeongdeung-po, Seoul, down. We headed down towards Suwon when our unit was turned around to help the Marines take Seoul.
How was the scene in Seoul, Gimpo, everything? Was completely destroyed, or what did you saw?
It was rubble.
Tell me this.
It was. To think that this had been a big city. There wasn't much left of a big city. The only thing that I saw that I thought was probably more intact was the university.
Seoul University.
Yeah. The old palace grounds and the university, I'd say were more intact.
Otherwise, everything else.
Everything else.
What were you thinking when you saw those destruction?
This is awful. You never see anything like that. Truthfully, I think I may have become a pacifist at that time, because I couldn't see people living in such conditions. And how often would these conditions continue? After all, later on, Seoul was again retaken by the Chinese then at that time.
Yep. So from there, where did you go?
From there, after Seoul, well, I went across the 38th parallel north, but then we were ordered back to Busan, and then was transported up to North Korea to a point called Iwon, I-W-O-N.
From Busan to Iwon,
Yeah.
did you take a ship or how did you go?
I was flown.
Flown to Iwon.
Iwon.
When was that?
It would be October, all those dates.
Right, October. That makes sense. And what did you do there in Iwon?
Well, Iwon, then after assembling there and getting our unit together, we went towards Hongnam, and then up about 20 miles northeast, the place that I refer to as
Wonsan?
anyhow, it was a very scenic looking, even though, don't forget we're getting into fall, winter, early snows and colder weather. Happy Valley, I called it Happy Valley.
Yeah.
And we were there, and I guess if we had a Thanksgiving Day dinner, that's where we had it. There.
What was your unit, division?
I was in the 7th Infantry Division, 1st Battalion, 32nd Regiment.
First And then 1st Battalion and
32nd Regiment.
hmm
That was in the 7th Infantry Division.
what did you do?
I was still in that S2, S3.
Okay. And so you know about the chosen battle, chosen few.
Yes, then it was about 4 or 5 days after that, they put together a regimental combat team. And we were ordered to go up to the chosen reservoir on the east side
Yeah.
of the reservoir and relieve a Marine regiment that had been up there so they could go over to the west side.
Yeah.
And then we went up there and
So you were there in Changjin battle.
I was there during the Chosin Reservoir battle.
Ah.
Yeah.
We just completed the monuments in Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, Virginia.
Yeah.
We just dedicated it. Do you know that? It was done May
I
4th.
think I had read something about that.
Yeah.
Being done.
Yeah. So you are,
I was Army side, which was the east side of the reservoir.
yes. Tell me about those battle experience. How severe was that?
Well, it's awful.
Tell me, please.
And
Detail. You need to tell
Well,
me the detail because students will learn from you.
that's what I like them to know that, and like to know them to know my feelings
Yeah, please.
as it happened. We went up there, and there was I don't know how you say it, Penuri Gang inlet to the reservoir.
Yeah.
And Colonel Faith, who was our battalion commander, didn't like the bivouac area at the inlet. He didn't think it was defensible. But the whole thing was that we were supposed to go on offense the next day to the Yellow River.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that the Marines that we were relieving were about 3.5 miles north of that inlet.
Mm.
So we decided, Colonel Faith decided we'd go up there, take those positions.
Yeah.
And that made us the northernmost unit at that point. And so we went up there and got ourselves on November 27th and got ourselves in place there and get ready for the night. And the next morning we were supposed to attack north. And well, there were even the Marines that we relieved had told us that they had run into Chinese, and but didn't put a lot of emphasis on it. You know, it's something that could be handled.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Colonel Faith and he was very aware of the situation that could be. You think the worst always, and then try and make best from there. And so we were up there, and down at the inlet, there was one other infantry battalion, and a couple of field artillery batteries, and an anti-aircraft platoon that was there, and we had other units maybe about 8-10 miles south of us, a tank company, a medical company, a service, what we call the service company, the clerks and all that.
Did you encounter any real close combat
Yes,
with Chinese?
yes.
Tell me about those.
Well,
I mean, tell me about
that night at around,
when are you talking about?
we're talking about, don't forget, we had heavy snow, we had,
Was it
25,
November?
30 below zero, I'd say, at least Fahrenheit. And we heard so I was back at the command post for the battalion, and we heard sporadic firing. We thought maybe because we had some Korean boys to augment our unit.
Mm-hmm. Katusa.
These yes, these poor kids were shanghaied off the streets. Believe me, because we heard their story. We had heard their stories.
Yeah.
And handed a carbine, never given any training, and sent with us. I'd say that in my unit there were probably somewhere between 500-600 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and there were about 2,400 of U.S. GIs, and so we heard the sporadic fire. We thought maybe some of these kids had gotten spooked,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and were firing at nothing. Well, it turned out this was the Chinese thrust into us at that was the beginning of it. And they hit our A company, killed the A company commander who was a good coffee drinking friend of mine, and killed him. And they broke through sporadically, and then another officer came into the command post, got a bunch of us together to try and breach where the Chinese had come through between our B and C companies, and try and get them out of there. We did somewhat, but they were met, too many of them really for us, and it was very scary. It was very scary. Talk about, are you afraid? Yes, it was very scary. They yelled, they screamed, they hollered, and of course they were.
What about you? What did you encounter any Chinese very close?
I would say as close as you and I are right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Then you must been kill him.
I don't know if I ever killed anybody. I honest to God don't know. You know,
So
I know
how-
I
so-
shot, but I don't know if I killed or hurt anybody or what. I really.
But anyway-
you're not thinking about that.
Right. But when you're so close, what did you do? You shot at him,
You
right?
did what you had to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when did you get out of there? How did you get out of there?
Well, that went on for that night, and then by daybreak they retreated back into the woods and into the mountains. But they were shooting at us all the time, regardless. I mean, they weren't attacking us. That next morning, a helicopter landed by our position,
Huh.
and it was General Allman, who was MacArthur's
Yeah.
chief of staff, and followed by a first lieutenant right behind him carrying his Allman's briefcase.
Did you saw that?
You know who that was? You ever hear of Alexander Haig?
Yeah. Haig, yes.
Who later, when Reagan got shot,
Yeah.
he said, "I'm in charge."
Yeah.
That was him.
Did you see him?
Yes.
Did you see General Almond landing?
Yes, I saw that, and they came. They wanted to see Colonel McLean, who was in charge of the regimental combat team, but he was down at his command post a couple of miles away. So they saw Lieutenant Colonel Faith, and the big thing was that I remember that whole meeting was he wanted, Allman wanted to assure Faith to be ready to do the thing that they were there for, is to move north as soon as you can pick things up again, move north.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to accomplish this mission. And his famous words was, which I had seen repeated in some books and periodicals. He told Faith, and I heard him say it, you should not be afraid of some Chinese laundrymen.
Why?
Like, because we had been attacked that night before by the Chinese and took some losses, we shouldn't be afraid of them. They're just laundrymen,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I know Faith, I could see the look on his face. He didn't care for that remark. I don't think any of us took it serious, you know. Yeah, we took it serious, but not as our own dispositions. But and then he gave a few medals out to some officers there, and I know Faith. I think he put it in his pocket or dropped it on the ground, and I saw one officer throw his away. There are high medals like Distinguished Service Cross or Silver Star, and so anyhow, then he went back to the helicopter. We never saw or heard. We had no radio contact with anybody. We had a Marine air controller with our unit, and the only thing was later on was he was able to contact the Corsairs, Marine Corsairs, when they would be over ahead of us. That was our only contact with the outside world.
We don't have much time, so I have to ask this question. When did you get out there? How did you get out of there? Did you get the ship from Hungnam?
No. About 3 days later, we finally got together with the unit down at the inlet that was down there, and we stayed 2 more nights there, and then realized no avail. We weren't going to do nothing. We were only going to get killed there or captured. So
how did you get out there?
We destroyed our artillery, destroyed our any vehicle that couldn't run.
Yeah.
And we put our wounded, stuffed our wounded in the trucks, and we had I'd say almost all of our officers were badly wounded, and we stuffed everybody in trucks. I think it was 27 trucks, and we had these anti-aircraft vehicles with these big guns on them that revolved, you know, and the Chinese were scared of them, and so because they were too powerful, and we went out of there, but we ran into so many roadblocks and everything along the way, and every time trucks slowed up. We left at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we hadn't gone but halfway to the 14 miles that we needed to go to get to Hagaruri.
Mm-hmm.
And we're every time you slow down, and of course we didn't slow. I'd say if we went 10 miles an hour at any time, that was the fastest. And it took us all that time just to get that far. And in the meantime, Colonel McLean, we lost getting down to the inlet at time, and Colonel Faith was killed about 4:15 in the afternoon, and then after that a major came up to me and he says, "Geb," he said, "see those guys going across the reservoir? Everybody's afraid to either drive or walk on the reservoir. You know how thick the ice was." And so he says, "We might as well join them. There's nothing more we can do here." I looked at my carbine, I had three rounds left of my carbine. No, there was nothing I could do. And so it was pitiful to walk away from there across the ice. Of course, I couldn't feel my feet. It was like walking with two clumps that were so frozen. And my hands were becoming more and more frozen. And but we got across there. To where some Marines were. And this was probably a good 10, 15 mile walk on the ice. And there was a Marine officer, and I thought that he probably was a colonel, and he kind of chastised us for leaving our men behind. And the trucks are wounded and things, well, later on I got into a warming tent at Hageroo, and I had gotten out there and talked to a motor pool officer, Marine motor pool officer. And because I was wondering if any more guys were still coming across the ice like we had. And he didn't know what rank I was. I was a sergeant at the time. And he didn't know what rank I was or anything, because everything was just too all bottled up. And I said to him something about, be nice if we could get some trucks to go over there and see if we could get anybody out of our convoy. And he said, well, I got to keep the trucks running, he says, otherwise they freeze up. And I said, any way anybody could get over there? And he said, well, he says, if anybody could get enough nuts together to go over there and see if they can get any of your wounded back, he says, we could try it. He said, I might even be able to find somebody to ride shotgun.
So
and we did. I found 46. I came back to him and said, I got 46 nuts. And we did. We went back there.
when you see so many people killed or dying of freezing and packed in the trucks, what were you thinking?
Didn't have time to think. You try and encourage all you can, and if there was anybody at all that could get out of the truck and handle a weapon, you tried to encourage them to try and do what they could, because in the truck they'd maybe just freeze to death.
Did you have a frostbite?
Yeah, I guess you'd call it frostbite. Yeah.
Do you have now?
Yeah. Well, every winter my cheeks just get tough and hard, you know, and it bothers me. My fingers, well, the chilblains they're just something awful. I have to really treat them.
Yeah.
Everything, but
so
I put up with it. You know, I worked on the railroad in train service for 45 years, and that was out in the weather, and I bore with it. I didn't give myself a chance to think about the war.
When did you leave Korea?
I left Korea that time on June of 1951.
So
I went to a different unit. They evacuated me because they thought I had the flu.
right,
They
but
evacuated me from Kuno.
Charles, we don't have much time. So from Hagaluri, where did you go? Just tell me the.
I went down to Kuno.
Kuno, and then from there.
I was flown to Japan.
Flown to Japan.
Yeah.
Why?
They thought I had the flu, and they didn't want everybody catching the flu.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Flu?
Flu.
Kuno?
I had pneumonia. It turned out I had pneumonia instead.
Oh, I see. So you were actually, so you didn't go down to Hungnam area, Wonsan?
No.
No. Where is Guno? Is it
It's-
below Hagaluri?
It's below.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I was out of it. Going up there, I could say is probably about 18 miles or 20 miles.
Below Hagaluri?
Yeah, and that'd be my recollection of going, because I was passed out. After we got the guys back that we brought across
Yeah.
in the trucks, I passed out.
Okay.
And that's how they figured I had the flu, I guess.
So, have you been back to Korea?
I went back in 1952.
What do you mean,
I was in
1950?
the Army yet, and I went back there in 1952.
Back to Korea again?
Mhm.
Why?
Why? I was in an engineer unit at the time, and I went back there. They were building building it and maintaining the airfields at Kimball, K-14, and K-16, which was Kimball was more for fighter interceptors at that time, and K-16, which was on a sandbar in the Han River at Seoul, and that was cargo planes, heavy C-124s. They're building those runways and maintaining those airfields for that.
So you went back again?
I had gone back there then, and I was in S3 at that time for an engineer battalion that was working with the Air Force, and I left there then in June of 1953.
Have you been back to Korea since then?
No,
You want to go back?
I would love to.
You let me know, because Korean government has a program.
I
release a
know that program.
You let me know.
The only thing is, I can't afford the airfare back and forth.
You pay half of it, not all of it.
I don't know.
So it costs around $700, or otherwise you don't pay nothing for hotel, meals, everything.
I know. I had a good buddy of mine that when I was back there the second time, and of course he's blind now, and he's older than me, about 89, and he and his wife went over there.
So please let me know if you want to go. What do you think about Korea right now? What is your legacy? All the faults.
I'm proud. I'm proud I had been there. Honest to God, I'm proud that I went there. It's a great country, and I love the people. I love the people. I'm so happy for their standing in the world, South Korea, for their standing in the world today. Honest to God, and I was saying that in front of you. I tell other people that too. I'm so proud. We came back and were told we lost the war. We didn't lose. We won that war. It's a win.
That's the point, right? Yeah.
I believe they said that it's the fifth best economic nation in the world today.
11th largest economy in the world.
11th largest economy.
But we are the 7th trading partner to the United States. Can you imagine that country that you saw completely destroyed?
Yeah.
Did you actually have a hope about the future of Korea when you left Korea in 1953? Do you think that Korea
No,
would...
the press and everything was we had lost it. We blew it. It was a big mistake and everything. I'm no lover of General MacArthur, believe me, I'm not, or of General Almond, but I think we did the right thing.
What do you think we have to do to teach more about this whole very historically important war, but it's been forgotten, and our history textbook only have one paragraph? What do you think we have to do more?
Do more of this.
More of this interview?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if you stay here, okay, and after the interview with your friends,
Howard, yeah.
yeah, I can do more because I really want to hear from you, but I have only 1 hour. You have done an hour now. So,
Time goes fast.
yeah. But I want to thank you for your fight for the nation so that we become now strongest ally to the United States.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
That is your legacy.
Yeah.
And I think we need to teach more about this to our young
I'm
children.
partly guilty because after I came home, I didn't talk much about it. I had a brother-in-law that had been in World War II. Many of the men that I worked with on the railroad had been in World War II. We felt for each other, but we didn't talk about it. But they knew, you know, we all, and I think I didn't have any what we call today PTSD, is because I didn't dwell on it, which was good in that way. But I didn't get the story out. It was after I had retired, you know, more that I got to talking about it.
So that's why we are doing this, and I hope that I can talk with you more, okay?
I would like to.
All right. Thank you.